This is the Smart Buildings Academy podcast with Phil Zito, episode 407. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to episode 407 of the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. In this episode, we are going to be covering essentially, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go and show you how to find customers that are focusing on energy and sustainability, either in their corporate strategy goals or in their RFPs. We're going to show you how to identify this information, how to kind of research it so that you can act on it. I want you all to understand this both from a perspective of pursuing opportunities, but also being aware of opportunities, because what you'll see is some of these opportunities that we're going to find as we go through this have already been awarded, but with that award comes potential opportunity for contractors, system integrators. As always, anything we cover here will be available at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/407. Once again, that is podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/407. So with that being said, let's dive in right away. This is going to be largely a screen share episode. So for those of you who are listening to this, I definitely want you to go and watch the video. So for those of you who are listening after the fact, go to podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/407, scroll down, and you will see the recording of the videos. All right, let's bring this on screen. So I'm specifically focusing in on public entities, governmental, and universities rather than private organizations. But you could go and use this on private organizations just as well as you use it on public entities. I live in Arizona, so we're going to focus on the University of Arizona and the city of Phoenix. First thing I want you to notice here is kind of a little thing I do here, which is University of Arizona Sustainability Plan File Type PDF. You notice I do the colon, then PDF. And what that does is that will pull any PDF files related to this topic. So once I do that, like right here, I'll start to see different things that will come up. For example, this is one right here. University of Arizona Sustainability Solutions talks about their current scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. If you've listened to our past podcasts on greenhouse gas reporting, things like that, I encourage you not to check out on this stuff. I know that there's like half of our audience that's super fired up by this. There's another half that they hear scope 1, scope 2, or they hear ESG and they check out. Regardless of how you feel about it, it is something that is being used by buyers to make decisions when it comes to contracts, when it comes to services. So we need to be aware of it. We need to understand how it directly impacts our building automation pursuits. So, we can see their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 targets. We can see kind of what they see as their performance. And then they talk about what are they planning to do. And what we'll notice as you dig into things, I came up right here. Granted, this was last year, right? It was July 2022, but still, requests and proposals to produce a comprehensive institutional sustainability and climate action plan, procurement and contracting services. Now, you may say to yourself, well, we're not really going to be doing consultancy services for this comprehensive sustainability and climate action plan, right? A lot of you probably aren't. A lot of you are building automation contractors, maybe design engineers, maybe you are system integrators. So yeah, but you should still, if you service, like if any of you listening right now service the University of Arizona, you should probably know that this happened and that they've probably selected someone to manage this. And from this process, as we scroll way down here, and we get into sustainability and climate action. No, that's not what we're looking for. It's in here somewhere. key deliverables. So what this person's going to do, right? This person is going to perform a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So SWOT, they're going to prioritize this information, anticipated impacts, risk cost avoidance. So guess what's probably going to come from this, folks? We're probably going to see some energy efficiency initiatives in the form of retrofit, in the form of new construction standards, in the form of monitoring data and tracking. I mean, we see that right here, right? The advancement of sustainability in higher education, sustainability tracking. We see the assessment and rating system that is associated with that. And so how are they going to track it? Well, that's where you're building analytics. That's where your emissions monitoring. That's where your grid logging and all of that fun stuff that you see all of these OEMs talking about right now in their solution set. So you want to be aware that this exists. And this all kind of ties back to their capital plan and their sustainability plan. So how did I get to this point? I quite simply just typed in university. So you can plug in any university, right? Maybe we do University of Texas. We'll see, right? They have a 2021 sustainability plan and they have a 5-year progress. So, right, this here, not super duper helpful. So let's go into this. All right, let's see what they've got. They've got a steering committee. Okay, so we know they have a steering committee. We know that they are going to go and do a couple different things. This is 2016, so it's obviously advanced more. But you can start to see that once you learn what your organizations that you're focusing on, see there's that stars again for the reporting, by the way, and lead, we can see that. So as we start to understand what the organization is focused on, then we can go and understand where we can potentially plug in to go and influence or to be part of an opportunity. All right, so let's take a look now. I'm going to move here to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. So I just typed in Phoenix Sky Harbor sustainability file type PDF. A lot of really cool stuff I found here. So one of the really neat things I found is their sustainability management plan. And we'll see if you ever need to know like who is potentially a person that you need to influence. You can see all the names there. We start to understand what they are trying to do. Now, we are going to focus typically on energy right here. That's going to be our primary area, not really air quality. We could potentially impact greenhouse gas emissions, but mostly energy. So if we go down here to energy, which is page 12, we're going to start to see improve energy efficiency of facilities 20% by 2020 and minimize greenhouse gas emissions. So what are they doing here? Bunch of stuff, right? Megawatts, photovoltaic stuff. Really, you know, for most of us, not something we're going to impact. Lighting, potentially for some system integrators and contractors. Lighting fixture. Now here we get into the stuff right here. Specifying high energy equipment and upgrading controls for efficient system usage. And we can already see one OEM's in there, right? We have the Honeywell Energy Manager program for energy data tracking, analysis, and reporting. They want to fully implement that. So you can tell this is a little bit old because it's talking about by 2015. But, you know, this was just a cursory 5-second glance in a Google search. If I dug deeper, I could find more current stuff by potentially going like I did here, City of Phoenix, PDF 2023 to pull more current stuff. But the key point is we've potentially got a competitor in there. They're using this solution. What are they using it to do? What are the objectives? And then how can we potentially impact things? If we dive a little bit deeper into here, we're going to see right there, update. This is a sustainability update for the airport itself. And we'll go to energy. We're going to see how they've achieved. How have they hit their goals? And that's the key thing you want to look at. Are they trending in the appropriate direction? And how are they trending? Because this is all going to be information you can use when you have this initial conversation with an energy manager, sustainability director, etc. So we see they're using renewables. Not much we could do there to help reduce energy consumption 30% against baseline by 2030. How do you do that? You do that through Guideline 36. You do that through installation of more efficient equipment. You do that through retro commissioning. You do that through analytics. These are all things that you could potentially sell to this airport, right? And they talk about what's coming up next. Well, there's going to be a controls improvement for Terminal 4 and the rental center, HVAC controls to optimize efficiency. They want to upgrade HVAC, so they're going to fund upgrades. They're going to do retro commissioning. I didn't read this beforehand, so those things that I just suggested to you, watch, they're popping up right here. So retro commissioning of Terminal 4. Lighting conversions. So they've got a couple things, total cost of ownership into project processes. What does this mean? This means the life cycle cost. So not only the capital cost, but they're going to be looking at what is the potential service cost. So you want to understand that and then update their baseline. But you can see kind of how this all is coming together. Then we move to City of Phoenix, sustainability plan, file type PDF. So here's their climate action plan. Let's get to, where was it? I believe it was this right here. Stationary energy goals. So whenever you see the term stationary, think like buildings, stuff like that. So what we're seeing right here is energy upgrades. That's why you have what are called stationary engineers. So you may see the term stationary. That's typically associated with buildings. So all buildings will be powered with net zero greenhouse gas sources of energy. They'll be net positive. But what are their targets, right? Net zero greenhouse emissions by 2030 through renewable energy projects, energy efficiency upgrades, and utility partnerships. So as a contractor or SI, you'd say, okay, or an engineer, what utility partnerships exist that maybe have incentives that help us to achieve this goal? Can I take advantage of those in either a retrofit or a new construction to reduce the cost and potentially make myself a more attractive bidder? Additionally, what are these energy efficiency upgrades? So once we understand these upgrades, then we're going to go and say, when do they want to buy? Well, we see they want them ideally by 2025. And that's going to be 3 community-wide conservation renewable energy programs, including educational programs and incentives to conserve energy. So these are all things that you want to go and dig into. Once again, you just take these keywords. I have no idea what's going to pop up here, but let's just try this. City of Phoenix. Energy efficiency upgrades 2022, file type PDF. Okay, here's our capital improvement plan. So let's see what this is. I have not looked at this yet. Alrighty, so, all right, there's the money, right? So this is the money that's going to be available. Now let's dig into kind of what are our programs, facility management. Let's focus in on that. It's got $101 million in funding. It's funded through a bunch of different ways. These are going to be requested and prioritized under the annual general fund prioritization process. So you're going to want to Google that, right? You're going to want to search what that is so you understand what that process is. The project requests or originate from facility lifecycle replacement plans. So you want to find the lifecycle replacement plans. And once you understand them, then, and the facility assessments, engineering studies, et cetera. Once you understand these things, and this right here, regulatory compliance, this is going to be huge as well. But once you understand this stuff, it's going to give you a pretty good visualization of what potential projects could be. Let's scroll down here, kind of see capital improvement plan. This is what they have allocated. So for energy conservation, right, we've got about 6 million. For other facility management, this is kind of a general category right there, and equipment management. So you can start to see kind of where this funding is, start to see where it is coming from. Where's the funding coming from? Bonds, etc. And then we can start to see any projects, right? Leaking underground storage tanks, security access control. So for those of you who do a access control project, right? Access control solution, there's a project right there. Provide maintenance and repairs. This is just a fire suppression system install, $5,000. Citywide rehab, critical maintenance and rehabilitation needs. So those of you who maybe want to help them out from a operations and maintenance perspective. So you can start to see kind of all this information right here that is available for you to simply go through and start to pick your targets of things you want to potentially pursue. So a lot of this is fire life safety, which makes sense. Phoenix is a desert. But as I was saying, you can go through, you can find a lot of this information right here. And then if we dig in, this was really neat. Unfortunately, the timeline is past, but it's something I found just simply doing a simple Google search. Was this RFP for energy efficiency technical support, essentially request for proposal for a consultancy to come in and basically help them meet their energy efficiency standards mandated by this Senate bill right here, tracking energy efficiency savings, electrification of greenhouse gas. So this is all your, type 1, type 2, type 3 stuff. And this is going to be developing a common platform for long-term statewide energy demand. So this is going to be a little bit of grid interactive stuff. But you can see what comes from this. Maybe you didn't win the opportunity, but now you can go in and you can read all of this information. And once you understand all this information, let's see, what is this? Bidder declaration. Okay, that's just, did they, oh man, I just closed it. Like I said, this is live. There it is. I'm going to see who, let me see, who won this. Take a look, see if it tells me. So it looks like Grid House Incorporated won this opportunity. Let's look at who that is. So let's take a look. Grid House, their advisory, consultancy, management services. So now you know who is going to be going and providing those services. Guess who you could potentially call on to potentially get your foot in the door with some energy and retrofit projects. This right here is a request for qualifications for construction manager at risk, so CMAR. And this is going to be for the airport. Remember when we looked at that Phoenix airport and it talked about Terminal 4 and sustainability and all of that? That's this qualification right here. But what I want you all to focus in on is, right, we've got our scheduled costs. We've got kind of our design construction schedule. We've got our project matrix, which is going to tell us like what's going on. And we can start to figure out what opportunity actually exists for us to try to pursue. So this is hopefully pretty helpful to y'all. Hopefully this gives you kind of an idea of how to research this information, how to kind of find this information. There's so much available, especially if you're doing business with a public university or a public government entity or a federal, or local government entity. Just using a simple Google primitive like file type PDF or file type PPT, which is PowerPoint, you're going to be able to go and pull. Let me see if this thing actually is useful. No, but you're going to be able to pull a lot of information. Some of it's going to be useful, some of it's not. But as you start to kind of hunt for those big whales that you want to secure for your engineering or contracting or system integration practice, this is how you do it. And also, what I hope you take from this episode, these opportunities are real. I run into a lot of SIs and contractors who still aren't sold on energy efficiency, greenhouse gas tracking. Like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not going to get into the politics of things, but the reality is that there's an opportunity out there for these kind of services, both from a regulation perspective, they're being regulated and required, from a social pressure perspective. So we're seeing large public institutions, either from their students or their constituents, demand this kind of product and service. And so you're seeing it being fit into budgets. So be aware of it, understand how to find the information, understand how to digest the information, which is what I hope you took away from this. So I'm going to go through my framework real quick. The first thing I do is I go into Google and I type in my targeted organization, right? University of Texas, University of Arizona, University of Pennsylvania, whatever. I type in sustainability plan or energy management plan or retro commissioning plan, file type, typically PDF. So I may type in like energy management plan 2023. I'll type PDF and I'll see what I can grab, right? So this, I believe, is their capital plan. So we can see this is the capital improvement plan, and it's going to give me an idea of all the projects that are going on. Once I understand those, I then need to ask myself, what can I potentially do in this project? Do I know who's running this project? Do I know on the owner side who's running it and on the contractor and GC side who's running it? Can I potentially get myself involved in it? If it's even earlier, can I potentially team up with the organization's preferred contractor to deliver a service to this organization? All right, so there you have it. I hope you learned something from this. I'm going to go and see what questions I can answer for the remaining 8 minutes. But hopefully this was valuable. I don't see anyone out there teaching this really and covering this. So I thought to myself, well, why don't we go and cover this and show people kind of how to do this and how to discover this information? The internet's a super duper powerful tool, and all of this information is publicly available. So why not go and grab the information and use it to our advantage? So that being said, let me see what questions I have from anyone in the audience. Let me first go check YouTube. So let's see if we got anything there. No questions yet. Alrighty. Let's check LinkedIn. Any questions there? Nope. Let's check Facebook. All right. So I'll give usually there's a 30-second lag. I'll give you all a second to ask some questions, see what maybe you have as far as questions go. Hopefully this was helpful to you and you learned something from this episode. All right. Let's take a look. Cool. All right, I'll give you all about 30 more seconds to ask questions, and then I will wrap this episode up because everyone's home from school because there's a giant windstorm and snowstorm right over our house. So, yeah, it's been a fun day. Haven't lost power yet, knock on wood. But, yeah, go ahead, Sai. You got a question. Go ahead and ask away. I will answer your question if I can. I almost got through the whole episode without my voice fading. Things are getting better. In these enterprise clients, which role is usually the champion or decision maker? So it depends. The nice thing is that with a lot of these customers, you can actually go and find out who is heading the project by just researching the project. And once you understand who's heading up that project, then you look at the capital plan. So first you want to know who's handling the project, right? And then you want to look at the capital plan and understand how they make decisions. Now, typically, public institutions and government institutions will not respond to you during a solicitation outside of the parameters set by the RFP or RFQ. That's for legal reasons. So don't expect potentially to get anywhere if it's already RFP or RFQ. It's simply you being aware of it and being able to respond. That being said, if you see capital plan and you're already potentially doing business with this customer, then what I highly recommend you do is try to identify who owns that building or that asset, form a relationship with them, understand what they're really looking for in qualifications, like what is the most important, and then position yourself appropriately. As well as some of these capital projects could potentially be funded through operational budgets, especially things like retro commissioning, retrofits, etc. So be aware of that as well. What I would say, typically the champion is going to be director, vice president of facilities, the chancellor, the department head. I mean, it's all over the place. It's really just try to find the project in the capital plan and then find the advisory team that looks at the capital plan. But realize once they go into that RFP, RFQ phase, as long as if they're doing things ethically and following their processes, they shouldn't talk to you during that phase. I'm not to say that that doesn't happen, but typically it's radio silent except for the communications as expressed formally in the RFP. Also, key point on strategy. A lot of people forget with RFPs and RFQs, something we talk about in our scoping and estimating course, and I want you all to be aware of this. Whatever you tend to put out as far as a clarification or request for information in an RFP or RFQ, if it's not closed responses, will typically be publicly listed. So someone will go and say, hey, this is going to be pretty important to success with the project. Maybe like it's something that could add a significant cost to the project, and you found it and you're like, oh man, I see that. I've done that before. You have to ask yourself strategically, do I clarify that in an RFQ or an RFC or an RFI? Because if you do clarify that, there is a likelihood that that information will be shared with all other bidders and solicitors, and your competitive advantage just went away. But additionally, if you have a solution in your product set or in your capabilities of your team, and you identify a potential way to add cost or add risk or add complexity, you can ask that in the form of an RFI or an RFC and get it in record, and maybe even potentially get it added to the scope so that now other contractors, other SIs cannot potentially compete. So for example, let me give you a real world example here. You have a integrated use case with access control, lighting, and building automation. You are a system integrator whose product line happens to include lighting controls, access controls, and building automation controls. Well, guess what happens? Now, because all three products are under your envelope, you could potentially have a lower overall management cost. And so you could potentially ask in an RFC or RFI, should the bidding contractor have all three product lines available so that they can provide single point of service? Or is it acceptable for a contractor to have only one product line? And is the customer willing to accept having to get service from multiple organizations? Structure that question that way, and they may go and adjust the scope and say, hey, guess what, folks? We need you to go and be capable of servicing or providing all three. And guess what? You've just potentially disqualified some of your competitors. So that's kind of how you can use the RFC and RFI in that public bid process. Hopefully that helped. Probably a little more detailed than you wanted, but that's just how I do things. Let me see. Any other questions? All right, so I got size questions. Let's check on LinkedIn. Okay. All right, looks like we're good. Looks like no more questions. So after the fact, you all listening to this after the fact, you all watching this after the fact, feel free to go and ask questions on LinkedIn, YouTube, on Facebook. If you're listening to this on iTunes or at our website, just shoot us a comment at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/407. Would love to answer your questions. That actually makes this a lot more enjoyable for me when y'all ask questions. Definitely makes it just more fulfilling to me to be able to help people. I like that kind of consultative help. So that being said, David, I haven't seen, is this David Katz, formerly of Kaba? Is that's awesome, dude. Hey, I haven't talked to you in a long time. What about the evaluation of non-monetary issues? Help me dive into what you mean by that. Are you talking about, yeah. Oh man. And if you came by the booth and my director of sales has told me, Phil, do not have conversations with people who are chatting where the rest of the audience cannot see what they're saying. So, so David said, what about the evaluation of non-monetary issues? And then I was like, oh, what do you mean by that? And then I said, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. And he said, yeah, I missed you at AHR. So, yep. Yeah, that sucks. I missed several people at AHR, apparently at the booth. So, but hey, we're going to have a bigger booth next year. So, and more people. So hopefully more space. And yeah. What do you mean though by non-monetary issues? What are you talking about? Help me to understand the question. Are you talking, because I guess I see everything as a monetary issue. Because like risk is a monetary issue. RFPs request the greenhouse gas of the suppliers. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So you're talking type 3 reporting. So type 3 reporting is the greenhouse gas admissions of the supplier. And it's one of the hardest nuts to crack. And I'm not quite sure how they're going to crack that nut, because that has some substantial downstream effects. Because like, here's the thing. Holy crap. I just got a bunch of questions. So here's the thing that is kind of crazy. We are essentially a small business. We train 13,000 students. We could report on our greenhouse gas emissions, but everyone works out of their house. So how would we, going to a government organization, pursuing government work, report on that? And we would have to like look at our utility bills. We would have to look at our footprint, et cetera, how much of our house is used in the pursuit of a product or project. Sorry. So David, that's a great question. That's a tough one to answer because that's really case by case specific. If you're an organization like us, I mean, you would have to go and calculate what is the square footage of the office in the house, and then what is my load. I mean, you'd have to come up with all that information, and then we'd have to look at our learning management system. Where is that hosted? What is the potential server load there, to be able to report on all of our type 3? So yeah. So David says, I'm asking how we would also reduce the greenhouse gas in the project and not on our individual goals. Become a B Corp. That may help us. I've never heard of B Corps. That's interesting. I'll have to Google what that is after the podcast. So that being said, I'm asking how would we also reduce? So a couple ways you could reduce, in effect, greenhouse gases. What you could do is purchase locally. So purchase from a supply house local to the project. Try to source stuff locally. Try to use local staff versus flying in expertise. Maybe potentially do a lot of remote work out of the office, remote configuration, remote design. So that way, across the lifespan of the project, you're doing less truck rolls. You're bringing less people out there. Those are all aspects that you could look at to reduce your environmental impact, thus making you, if I'm following the track you're on right here, the theory is we have a huge project, 10,000 man hours, and right now it's 60% on site, and we're going to reduce that to 30% on site, provide the same solution. Thus, in theory, we reduce our commute, and thus we reduce our type 3 emissions, which then we could argue to the person who's qualifying us that we have a strategy to potentially reduce the type 3 emissions of their project and ultimately their portfolio. I think I'm tracking with you on that. And that would be one way you could position it. So hopefully that helps. Alrighty. Man, these are great questions. I hope you all really enjoyed this. Thank you all so much for being here. And like I said, within about an hour-ish, the podcast will be up at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/407. If you all like these types of topics, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, like and subscribe on YouTube, share and comment on LinkedIn. Those will all help substantially. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you all on Friday. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do on Friday, but it'll be fun. So thanks a ton, everybody.